All right, there we go. What's going on, fellow art warriors? Welcome back to another monthly challenge critique stream. This is for the December challenge. And as always, I've got Alice with me to help me out. And we've got some pretty cool work to take a look at. So we had a chance to review the pieces, and we are choosing for the winner this month Cadence's piece. We think that Cadence had a really nice illustration that felt pretty complete and tells a really nice story. So we'll get more into detail once we take a look at her piece specifically. But why don't we break down what the actual challenge was as well? So we had our Discord members paint an epic snow warrior utilizing the reference for your color palette inspiration or put your warrior in the scene. So we found this really cool, really interesting color palette snowy scene, which we felt was totally appropriate for December. And I think we had some pretty cool and successful paintings come out of this. So it looks like Meglit, Cadence, and Biaro are in the chat. So good to see you guys, all of my mentees this month, and I am really excited to be working with you guys. I think you guys have been, even since your submissions too, I feel like I've seen level ups from you guys. So yeah, let's kind of dive into it. So yeah, I feel like I'm going to be critiquing some of your guys' work, and you're going to be like, oh man, I've gotten better since then. But for educational purposes, we are going to review all of these anyway. So I'm just going to go in order of what I have in my file. So Biaro always does these like really cool like character concepts with descriptions and then an illustration, which is really interesting to see. It definitely is more work to do, but it shows his thought process a lot more. Mm-hmm. And yeah, go ahead.
I'm just going to point out, first off the bat, Biaro, great composition, very cool characters, but my dude, what is this palette? It is completely different from the reference image. It's cool.
Yeah.
It's very dramatic, but it is so not the same thing.
Yeah. I agree.
As what's in the original. I guess you were just like pushing it to a dark winter scene, something very sort of moody and like pre-dawn light, mm-hmm. as opposed to dawn light. I would have loved to see some of those yellows though, like some golden glints off of the back of the fur hoods and stuff, like just piercing through the fog. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just me though.
Yeah.
I don't know, Nick, what do you think?
No, I agree. I think he was actually pretty successful in the color palette that he chose, but in terms of like matching it to what the actual assignment was, it's definitely not from the reference image. But that being said, I do really like that this illustration feels almost like it's from a movie. It's got that kind of like color graded feel, and I think this is challenging too, because a lot of times what can happen when you're trying to like fully color grade a piece, you're kind of choosing from the same hue block, but he still seems to have variation where it's like it almost seems like there's more greenish tones in the foreground and then more bluish tones in the background possibly, or maybe more dark blues in the foreground it looks like, and then more light greenish blues in the background. So it is pretty challenging to do, but I think it turned out pretty cool. Oh, what's up, Spell Knight? All right, I always like to read these. So Dunchit Raiders, the icy cold snowscape of the Whisper stretch has little life, but the lands are never truly free of hostility. Sporting oversized arrows and bows coupled with deadly aim, the Dunchit Raiders will eagerly rob and kidnap travelers crossing the mountain range. Staying out of open snow is recommended, as the Dunchkit, is it Dunchkit? Yeah, Dunchkit tend to ride on tamed ice fishers, stick to the trees. So
Wow.
this is a cool description, and what I appreciate about this, I think this one more so than some of the other descriptions that BR has written, is you don't need the description in order to understand the concept. So I'm not saying to not add the description, but sometimes BRO has added a description that is not replicated in the design itself. So with the concept design, you should be able to like look at it and immediately like get the vibe, get what this guy's doing, get that it's like dangerous. Even the creature itself, it's kind of like a little goofy, but it's also like menacing at the same time. And I think that it's very easy to tell that just by looking at this.
Yeah.
As always, I'm going to do my put this in black and white thing because there's something I'm seeing quite immediately. And I think this is hard to do because you have the white of the snow guy, and then the thing's fur is also kind of white. But right in this, let me get a darker color, right in this area, we're losing the the separation of forms. It's kind of like I don't exactly know where this guy's cloak is starting and the like mohawk part is sort of ending. So let's kind of see what we can do about that really quick. And again, too, like after seeing what Biara has done this past week, I'm like, oh my god, he can paint so much better now. But again, I'll just critique it to critique it. So I think the easiest thing to do is to just introduce these like really like almost like whites to separate these forms a little bit. And the other thing to think about as well is if we are doing more of like a kind of angled down white light scenario, that does mean that okay, the light's going to hit the top of this guy's head and the light's going to wrap around the front of the cloak. So what you can do is you can darken the cloak a little bit and then brighten the mohawk, let's call it, of the creature a bit, and it's going to help push everything out more. So just put dark values behind light values and light values behind dark values in order to make things pop. And you can kind of just start more subtle and keep pushing this value shift as much as you feel is necessary to ensure that your forms are actually like sticking out on top of each other and overlapping. And I think even just this little bit of lighting is making already a huge difference in seeing this thing a little bit more. What I would say as well is like it takes me way too long to zoom in and to actually see the character's face in this mess of cloak. And I would probably suggest just making the face bigger and more pronounced and poking it
Yeah.
out of the hood more. And what we can do too is just hit little tiny hits of light on the nose, like the snout, and maybe on
Interesting.
yeah, the little cheeks, just to push that more. And that's really going to help us very instantly now see the character that I think is the most important character. It's kind of like even though the beast is like really in your face, I do think that the Dunchkit Raiders are the guys sitting on their back, right? So we want to
Yeah.
make sure that they're obvious and not like hidden. And you can see this is such, as with most of these critiques, very, very minor change, but my God, it makes such a difference. The last thing I want to mention as well with this piece, so we're not just like hanging on this for so long, is really look at reference and look at like what does a duck bill look like, because I think that's the texture that you're trying to emulate with this. What were you gonna
I
say?
have a fantastic reference for BRO
Oh
that I
yeah.
just remembered. Yes. I got this from a class that I took on creature design. And this uh like platypus
Mm,
creature is like has its head up at such a proud angle, which is really hard to find a good
yeah.
reference for. But a classmate of mine had an amazing website that it gives you like search for an animal skull, and it gives you a 3D render of a skull, and then you can move it to whatever angle
Oh,
you're trying to
cool.
draw the animal skull at, and then it will search the internet for pictures of that. Yeah, BR has used it before. Okay, cool. I'm gonna find the link anyway, though, just in case somebody else would like to use it. Um, because it's just fantastic. It'll give you like 9 or 12 photos of that particular type of animal, like dog, hawk, whatever,
Hmm.
at the angle that you need.
That's
Plus,
awesome.
you just have the skull as a helpful thing. So let's see if I can find it in my uh, giant list of bookmarks, which is just a mess. Animal photo art reference search. Is that it? Yes, it is. Haha.
I like these little attention to detail too, where it's almost like I imagine this is maybe drool coming from the creature that has like frozen, which is really interesting. But I think that if you're going to have a very specific idea like this, you need to make it more pronounced and obvious that that's what the idea is. Otherwise, it gets lost in translation. So, something I've been doing, and I know I've recommended to all three of you mentees in here, is starting to exaggerate forms a little bit, almost like exaggerate things more than you think they should be exaggerated. You can always pull stuff back, but I'm starting to realize that it's like the going big or going home sort of situation where if you go too small with something, it's harder then to scale it up than going too big and then scaling it back down. So that's kind of the last thing I would say. I'll just do one last like turn this on and off. I'm trying to make the bill feel a little bit more. It's almost has like a plasticky kind of look to it, and it's got a little bit of a shine, and yeah, just popping out the form some more. Sorry, my baby is having a tough time going to sleep in the other room. It sounds like
I was wondering whether that was a baby or a kitty.
no, that's the baby. Yeah, my child hates sleep just like his dad. So
He will also grow up to work constantly, and
yeah. Okay, cool. You shared the reference.
mhm.
Awesome. All right, let's take a brief look at this again. Let's look at the black and whites. Okay, so I think for this, I'm going to critique. I actually think you got really good depth in here, Biaro.
I
I
agree.
think I think that knowing what you know now, you'd probably have a little bit easier time lighting this. I think that some of your lighting is creeping into your midtones, and there's not a very clear indication of like where is the light plane, and then how is it wrapping around the form into the shadow plane. But what I think is maybe a better thing to discuss right now is just its general composition, where it feels like this figure right here is very in the center or like weirdly just off center from the edge, and I can probably even show you guys exactly. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Oh my god. I just proved that on camera.
Wow. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, anyway, so that's the center of the canvas, and the character is just a little bit off center, like almost in a weird way. It almost feels like if you're gonna make the character centered, I would just make its what am I doing? Make it centered, and maybe make it again talking about going exaggerated, just making it a little bit bigger possibly, so it really feels like it's in the foreground. Wacom update utility. No thanks, not right now.
I have a question,
Yeah.
Nick. It feels a little odd to me that if this character is in the center, we putting something in the center of a piece it
feels weird.
it needs to be justified, right?
Hmm.
It's like you gotta have a really good reason for putting something in the middle.
Yeah.
Um, and I wonder if maybe the character was looking over their shoulder and we saw their face,
Mm.
and it was like it had some really like dynamic lighting, like maybe they were holding a torch,
Mm.
and like, you know, we got like a like horrified expression or like panicked expression. Maybe that would kind of justify it a little more, because that would give
Yeah.
us like a big kind of storytelling moment. um I feel like maybe we need that level of intensity if there's going to be a character in the center of the
Yeah.
piece.
I think I agree with you. And that's why sometimes you have to just like draw. This is why we do thumbnails, so we get a little sketch down and then we can kind of nudge things around or just kind of keep redoing it until it feels more right. Because yeah, there's definitely something just not quite right with this composition. And I've talked about composition before, and I know there's like, there's the rule of thirds and all that kind of stuff, and sometimes I abide by those rules, but honestly, a lot of times with composition, it's a bit of an intuition thing, like just like, does this feel quite right? And right now, what's feeling right to me is pushing this figure over more, making this figure like really pronounced in the foreground. So I think a lot of times when you're composing, it helps to picture yourself as the cameraman. And it's like, what would be most exciting if you were the cameraman capturing the shot? And in this situation, if you're the cameraman, being like like 2 feet behind the figure that's like raising their arms in fear, I think is a pretty dynamic angle. So I like that you kind of have a lot of these guys. I mean, this is a very dramatic composition. You have these guys kind of like coming out of the fog. You have a couple of these like scared figures, but now you can maybe kind of stack them a little bit more. And now that I'm actually thinking about this, BRO, I think I've seen this from you quite often where it almost feels like you have this need to like really separate your figures space wise out instead of playing more with dynamic depth and allowing for a bit of overlapping. So don't be afraid to, it's definitely harder to overlap your figures, but a lot of times it can lead to more interesting compositions if you execute it correctly. So like I'm trying to move this guy over and kind of like maybe that's too cluttered. So I'm gonna erase him out and then okay, maybe we can put the other guy like here. We just keep messing around with where your figures go until it starts to feel right and until you're really like selling the
Yeah.
scene.
uh and I want to say personally, I have gotten halfway into painting a piece and realized, oh, this ain't working.
Yeah.
That guy is in the wrong spot for this composition to work nicely. I have to move him. I have to take a big brush or take the select tool and just paint him out and start again. Um, because my intuition isn't always right from the get go. Um,
Yeah, I've done the
like,
same thing. Definitely. Sometimes yeah, you got to just scrap it and
mhm,
try something else.
yeah. Um, you shouldn't feel beholden to your initial thought,
Mhm.
even if it means having to change something that you put a lot of effort into,
Mhm.
because it will save you pain in the
Yeah.
long run. Bureau says, you are right. I get scared to put guys behind each other. LOL. I know in real life figures overlap each other all the time. I would suggest taking a look at some paintings from the High Renaissance, where there are a lot of dudes and a
Mhm.
lot of limbs.
Mhm.
Um, because in the late 1500s, down in Italy, they got very excited about a lot of bodies and a lot of um, got really excited about a lot of bodies. That's a fun sentence. Uh, the artists were experimenting with a lot of dynamic posing and a lot of how they could incorporate as many figures as possible into dynamic space, um, using atmosphere and perspective and composition, and which continued into the classical and romantic eras of painting. And the romantic era happens to be my favorite. Um, uh, so I think you'll see that a lot with like uh, Michelangelo. Not my favorite, um, but you get the beginnings of that. A lot of stuff that he painted was sort of on the same plane, but then you get into like Friedrich, and there's a lot of atmosphere in his paintings, which is, big. I'll stop rambling, but
No,
uh,
I basically look at reference of what people have already done that's been successful and try to incorporate that into your own drawings and paintings. So
yeah,
what I tried to capture with this new composition is like feeling like you're more a spectator and like, or you're one of the people that's about to be attacked, right? Like you want to build that fear in your composition, and basically just by making it a little bit more claustrophobic, I think that that kind of helped. And again, going off of this idea of the color grading stuff, like look at films and see how people have actually composed their shots in cinematography, and that's a really good lesson on how you can compose your paintings as well.
I just posted a link to filmgrab.com, which is where I often go if I'm feeling stuck on composition. Also, Filmgrab is they don't it is the like free version of ShotDeck. ShotDeck used to be free. They had like a ton of references of movie screenshots for you to peruse at your leisure, but it is now subscription based, and I think that's kind of lame. Filmgrab, though, they have a narrower selection, I think, based on whoever runs it, like the directors that they care about. There's mostly horror movies, I think, that are interesting to look at, but a lot of stuff with interesting compositions. And but there's some good like Guillermo del Toro movies on there, and a lot of stuff from A24 is on there. So if you need some inspiration about how shots are arranged, Barbie's on there. Go wild, explore. What Nick was saying about imagining yourself as the cameraman, we can learn a lot from that aspect.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, what was I just gonna say? Okay, yeah. So let's dive into Cadence's piece, and for anybody that has just joined us, Cadence is the winner for this past month, and we think that she has a very beautiful piece right here. Oh, that's what I want to say. I saw a couple people just give us a subscribe or a follow on Twitch, so thank you for that, and I'm glad you're here to watch the critique stream. Okay, so again, Cadence, I think some of these critiques I'll probably be giving you is stuff you've already heard in our sessions, but I think it's probably good to just reiterate this for everyone else. So the first thing, and this is something I've just seen with Cadence's pieces in general, and what I've told her specifically is that she's getting to this point where it's more important now than ever to focus on nuance. And nuance is what's going to, at this level, push her to the next level, because she has a lot of her fundamental skills already in place. And I understand this is for a challenge. Maybe she didn't want to spend 300 hours freaking painting this thing. But if you're presenting this, especially if it's going to be on a stream, I think there's a couple quick things that she could have just like tidied up really quick before hitting submit. So when you're kind of leaving shapes like this, we're seeing these silhouettes very, very obviously, and it's like I can see what she's done to create these brushstrokes. And with digital painting, you want to do the best job you can to almost like hide your digital paint strokes. So I'm also seeing a lot of these like overlapping values in the background, and it's just because she's been kind of soft with like blending in these colors together, and it's yielded a really beautiful color palette. But it's the stray marks that are really taking away from the tightness of the figure. So I'm just going to go into just touching some of this stuff up just a little bit, and I'm going to flick it back and forth, and I'll show you guys kind of like how much of a difference these little tweaks make. So Alice, if you have any notes while I'm painting or any thoughts?
Sure. I think the inherent like digitalness of digital painting can really be a thorn in our side when we're trying to get a canvas covered quickly, because I think a lot of us, you and I, Nick, we both are sort of always pursuing a style that looks as effortlessly non
Digital.
digital as possible.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of artists that embrace the very smooth, like shiny, Photoshoppy look that you can achieve with these tools. You can easily take a soft, like 50% opacity round brush and just, even out all the edges and make everything look real smooth. And it's just, it's a skill that you can acquire, and it takes some work, but you can make something look kind of like anime-like even. But the kind of painterly style that I think Nick and I both appreciate does require a lot of finesse and time. And you can speed up that process if you work really hard at it. And there are some brushes that you can help you with it. I tend to be more of a brush goblin than Nick does. I think
Yeah.
you
Can
said
I
like,
just cut in really quick? So
yeah, of course.
you saying that. So for background like that, I'm using a brush that has strokes like this, so that when you blend, you get a more smooth transition than if you're blending this stroke over top of this stroke. Do you guys see how like we're getting a very like clear overlapping straight line as opposed to just a couple strokes? Helps those pixels blend a little bit better. So I wouldn't maybe suggest painting your whole painting like this, because then everything maybe will feel too soft. But if you're trying to go for softness and go for that like depth of field and a blurrier background, it might help you to start with a brush that is a little bit easier to like blend from the get-go. So sorry, go ahead.
Actually going to say one thing that like I try to do quickly, and I think you've seen this in my work, Nick, is that like I will just go in with a hard brush and try to block everything in quickly. I need the color to be on the canvas immediately, so that I know how every shade is gonna like interact with each other. So I'll go in with something that doesn't blend at all, and then I'll fix it
Yeah.
with the kind of brush that you're using there.
Yeah.
So like a block brush or a pretty hard brush, like I think what Cadence used in her background initially, I think can be a great canvas cover just to get your thoughts on the page.
Yeah.
Because I was actually talking about this before the stream. Boldness serves us so well as artists, and it is a skill that we don't uh, we don't acquire easily at first. It is really, really hard to cover a page or try something wacky and dynamic and out there when we're still learning. So not using the soft brush, not drawing the character in a T pose or like with their hands behind their back, not trying something that we think is beyond our means, our capability. An artist who can do that, who can challenge themselves really consistently, is going to have an advantage out of the gate. So I encourage you guys to, and I also, I'm saying this for my own benefit. I think I need to do this more. Try the things that scare you, even if that means like using a brush that is not your comfy brush, or drawing a pose that isn't the one you draw all the time.
Yeah, basically the easiest way to learn is by like doing the new stuff that you're not comfortable with. So I would and I think maybe we're kind of suggesting this more for, let's say, at least an intermediate skilled artist, because at a
Yes.
certain extent, as a beginner, you just have to like learn your fundamentals. You got to just start learning how to place shapes around. But once you're starting to get like the general sense of that, you're like, okay, I need to then go on to learning more specific things. So like, how do I render different kinds of material? How do I play with different color palettes? How do I use different brushes and textures to achieve different looks and styles? So yeah, I definitely think you're spot on. This is something else I've noticed with some of Cadence's pieces, is like she's almost there with like pushing her value structure, but like not not quite. And what it leads to is this feeling of like almost like chalkiness, and that's the only way I can really think to describe it. But like all of the textures then kind of feel very very similar, as opposed to having more of that like glowy, beautiful, airy light feel. And I think Cadence is definitely capable of that. It's just a matter of, again, that like nuance stage. So
Yeah.
even this log thing that's like in the foreground, I'm looking at this reference, and this is why I thought this would be a good opportunity for you guys. And I'm looking at some of these edges of the tree, and it's almost like I'm seeing this like really harsh kind of orange hit. And this is so pixelated, but you see these like little tiny pixels here and there around the edges where the light beams are like traveling across the edge. And adding those little tiny hits in are going to make it feel like the light is actually hitting these objects. So I'm trying to just run that around everything, to give everything a bit more of a pop to the glow. So let me just kind of go back and forth.
Yeah.
And again, like I'm not really changing that much. So what I did was I tightened up a lot of the background kind of squiggly stuff. Like there's still stuff, and the way you should be thinking about this too, guys, is like at this scale. Like at a small scale, if there's something that's still jumping out at you, it means you have to clean it up. So I'm literally still seeing this little shape that's like annoying the crap out of me, and I'm just going to take literally 2 seconds to just brush that back out so it's not
Yeah.
annoying me anymore. And you kind of have to look around your whole piece and try to look
Yeah.
for those little things and just touch them up. So I touched up that stuff. I gave a little bit more oomph to some of the white parts. Like your white snow was feeling too white, considering there's the sunset. Like you can literally look on the reference. The snow is pink, and even if you're going for like a lower contrast, like lower kind of like chroma image compared to the reference, like this reference has a lot of contrast in it. We have really, really dark darks and really, really bright brights. It still needs to kind of abide by the rules of light, where like if you're having this super orange light hitting white snow, the white snow is going to capture some of that
Hmm.
orange, right? Um, the
Yeah.
other thing,
That's one of the reasons I love pictures like this, because you look at an image of snow and you think, oh, it's white, it's all white. But
Mhm.
if you look very carefully, there's really not a lot of white at all in this image. It is beautifully stained by the sunset light.
Yeah,
And it's blue and it's pink and it's purple and orange and yellow. And you get to see that reflected beautifully in any character or animal or whatever that you put into the scene.
yeah. Um,
Yeah.
I'm actually just looking at this armor right now, and it's like Cadence is literally plotting the bounce light and the light in the exact proper spots, but it's just pushing that value shift just like one notch higher. Like, look at this. It just starts to feel like leather. And I know she's showing us this is a worn down, more beaten leather material. It's not like super shiny, but it's still leather. It's still going to be
Yeah.
more reflective than the cotton or the this looks more like suede, and we all know what suede looks like. It is a dull, dull, dull leather. So in order to distinguish that, we have to make it look like a different texture and render it
Mhm.
differently than we would some of the other materials. The other spot I noticed was this ridge back here. I get that it's like kind of flat going off into space, but we still want to kind of vignette the figure a little bit more, so we're really punching out the light in the center. So I just kind of added a little bit of multiply and gave it a bit more gradient so that we're focusing more on this beautiful figure right here. So yeah, all in all, this is a really, really nice painting. It's just like some touch-up stuff at this point.
Mhm.
So
We also like notice that there is an entire little story told in this illustration, which
yes,
is what we want.
yeah, yeah,
We are artists telling stories with visual media.
hmm,
um, as concept artists, illustrators. So th- there is a beginning, middle, and end here, and it's all um, beautifully depicted. So well done, Cadence.
yeah, yeah,
Very,
definitely.
very nice.
All right, let's see. Let's look at Kay's piece. Okay, cool. And I know that Kay has kind of like different styles she's been pursuing. Like I've seen some like really rendered stuff from her. So I guess this was probably just more focused on design than on and maybe just like figure study than obviously like a render or something like that, and focus on lighting. But there are some things that I definitely think could be touched up. So, first thing I'm seeing is the head is just too big. And I think I've said this probably plenty of times on stream before, but if you notice that your heads are too big on your figures, start making them smaller than you think they should be, and it will eventually start evening it out. And I'm saying this from experience, coming from somebody that used to draw Dragon Ball Z for like the first, I don't know, half of his life, and then realizing that, oh my god, all my heads are like just way too out of proportion. So I really had to make a conscientious effort to make sure that yeah, I was balancing everything out. So now that I lowered her
Yeah.
head, I can start to get this poofy material feeling more like it's actually resting on her shoulders. And I think that's something to kind of note when you're dressing up your figures, is just because there's something poofy on there doesn't mean that it's not going to abide by the rules of uh, gravity, right? So understanding where exactly her shoulder is going to help us better understand how this material is going to then poof out and wrap around that shoulder. So otherwise, you guys see, hopefully, like it just feels not quite right, and it's because it doesn't look like it's sitting on anything at that point. Um, Let me see what else. I think being more intentional about the anatomy, especially of the torso. Like she's doing this really dramatic hip pop, and if you're gonna sell that, then again, this is what we keep saying about like kind of going big or going home. Like really pop out her butt, really punch in her waist, and try to make this feel like it's like she's really pushing that pose. Her chest line as well, I think we could probably tilt it in. And I'm imagining Kay was maybe looking at reference for this, but I'm not 100% sure. But I would just imagine that based on the fact that this shoulder is higher than this shoulder, that her chest line is also going to be swooping up to kind of match. Like if you guys even look at my screen, like I'm lifting my shoulder, this chest is lifting up as well. And sometimes, as goofy as it is, you might just need to look in your own camera and just like do the pose and be like, okay, am I reflecting that in my painting? Um,
Or bribe a partner or a loved one to do the
yeah,
pose for you.
yeah, definitely.
I have many photos on my phone of my husband or my best friend, like sitting all weird, doing a thing.
Yep.
uh, and I haven't deleted them, even though I finished the painting ages
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah, I've got a lot of those kinds of references too. Um, the other thing I'll say, and this is maybe a good time to plug my figure drawing session that's coming up on
Yay.
Saturday. Yeah, so we're doing another figure drawing workshop. It's going to be like an intensive 4 hour session. Alice is going to be helping me out with that one as well. And we're doing specifically male figure drawing for that session. And you can actually hop over there. Can you post the link in the chat? My just nickhajialsar.com. You get
I
the
will
chance,
indeed.
please. But yeah, we just did the female figure drawing session a couple weeks ago, and it was awesome. We all had a good time. We drew a lot. We got a lot done, and we
Yeah.
walked away with like a more finished painting. But that being said, one of the things that I brought up in that session was just kind of a generalized rule about limbs, where from the hip to the knee should generally be about the same distance as the knee to the foot. So you can kind of do like a very quick look see to be like, am I hitting that thing? And the same thing from the shoulder to the elbow should be about the same distance as the elbow to the hand. And if those aren't just at a glance kind of visually matching up in your eye, then something is off. And what I noticed about Kay's figure is that her knees just felt really low, and it made her, especially this one, like I'm starting to see the kneecap down there, and it's just making the thigh feel like way too long. So I'm trying my best to kind of just like think through this structure. The other thing I will say too is if this foot is in the foreground, right? Even if we're looking like, even if the camera is like right in the middle and we're kind of looking very straight at the figure, this leg is still going to be a little bit back in space. And right now, her heels just look like they're like so close to the same plane. It almost looks like this leg should be like bending forward or something like that, like bending inward, right? So just take note of that and just be like, okay, what needs to happen for this to feel like it's back in space? We just have to lift the back plane of the back heel so that there's actually this like depth, like
Yeah.
kind of like that. I will
Um.
say, really, really quick.
Yeah.
This leg, if she's planting on this leg, and even if this leg is relaxed, it still needs to, it still needs to go straight down in order to feel like it. She's standing on it. Otherwise, it's like it just doesn't look like the fact that it's angled or pivot the pivot point is kind of angled outwards. It's like where is she leaning, so that's something else to note. Go ahead, Alice. What were you going to say?
I want to briefly comment on the character design.
Sure.
Because figure drawing aside, I think it's an interesting design. I like the color palette that you chose for her. It's very sort of close colors, but it's still, you chose a nice kind of differentiated areas that
I'll
are
literally
different.
show you why this color palette is working. So this color palette is working because we have the blue skirt, we have kind of the purpley, let's just call it like purpley brown, um, whatever you call that.
Jerkin,
It's
think
almost like a corset,
it's
but
a bodice. Yeah.
sure. And then we have her hair, which is popping. So if we look at complementary colors, and that's what's cool about Coloris is it immediately shows you
Love Coloris.
the blue is the complementary color of the yellow, and then the purple is pretty close to the blue. So we're kind of like having the major colors of the figure be
Split complement.
yeah, split complement. Yeah, exactly. So I don't even know if Kay intentionally chose these colors, but color schemes like that work. So it's kind of like another one that could probably work. I'm not good at thinking about these off the top of my head. It's usually intuition, but let's say red and then probably like this turquoise and then probably this blue could probably work. Yeah, that looks like it looks good together. And there's like a reason it looks good together because like on the color wheel it like makes sense. So,
Hmm. Split complements are like the cheat um color palette,
mhm.
because it's like you choose two and then you get like the third kind of little one to the side,
But I
and
think
then
specifically what's nice about this is that the blonde hair is more it
subtle.
takes up a smaller space than the more
Yeah.
monochromatic body.
Yeah.
So,
I wanted to sort of do a little pivot though.
yeah.
When designing a character that has sort of a like basic setup like
Mhm.
this,
Yeah.
especially like a tribal um like warrior, somebody with not a lot of ornamentation to
Mhm.
them, like, she's got a three-piece costume essentially.
Mhm.
um where can you find this character's identity in their clothes?
Yeah.
um and I think pattern and symbol are really going to um like be your friends here. Um if this person, she probably has like one set of clothes, right? And she's going to take care of her clothes really conscientiously because she only has one pair of things to uh like work, sleep, live in.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, this is probably armor, but that little skirt that she's wearing is probably like an underdress that she wears every day.
Mhm.
Um, and those boots, probably her one set of boots. And she cares for them. So maybe she has some embroidery on her skirt and her boots. Maybe not a lot if she's not a very like decorative person, but maybe her mom made them for her and her mom embroidered some flowers along the hem, or like, if she's not like somebody who likes flowers, or that's not a symbol that you would associate with her, maybe like a pattern, a star pattern, like a or a, a symbol of a simple X like along the border, or the symbol of her clan has been painted on with a dye. something to like bring out her identity in these very basic clothes. Um, and even if you don't really have a very strong uh like thought of who this person is, you can just start ideating with um like shapes on the clothing like that. Uh I find that to be really helpful when designing character clothing, especially when you really don't have that much to work with. Um, and if you think this person is very bare bones, really doesn't care about the clothes that they're wearing, or maybe her clothes are like stained and muddy, maybe her weapon is what she cares for. And you could like go ham on her weapon, make it super ornamental, make it like runes carved into it, a gorgeous handle, something that she like puts a lot of effort into and is like fully carved with like symbols of her ancestors, or like something that she made herself to reflect her journey that she's been on. Um, these are all things that you can take into consideration when you are building a character with their identity visually. Because all the viewer sees, all the information that we get is through what she looks like. We don't get to talk to her and hear her story. We just get information through shape, color, texture, silhouette. That's it. So, um, just food for thought for next time.
Yeah. So that's what I'm just kind of doing like a design pass on this right now, and hopefully just by you guys watching, you can kind of get between what Alice is talking about and what I'm trying to show. I still don't think I quite have nailed an identity for her besides like the obvious like she's a Viking inspired warrior kind of thing. But design wise, I'm trying to just pull in elements that will describe the character a little bit more. So, tattering up her clothes shows that she's like been traveling around and fighting people. Having the tattoos shows she's like more from some sort of clan potentially. Having a bag or a satchel shows that again she's a wanderer and she needs to be able to carry stuff somehow, or else how is she gonna like eat or like have potions to recover or whatever, like you know if you don't give your adventurer a bag, it's kind of like how are they going to be able to do anything? That's always been my thought. So
Where are they going to store their potions?
yeah. So yeah, just thinking through shapes and designs and patterns and like I think at the end of the day, it's kind of like it's not really a good excuse to be like, oh, my character's very minimalistic unless it's like they're completely really bare bones. Otherwise, it's like you're not really telling any of the story. You're kind of just
Yeah, is
like
your
putting clothes on a person.
is your character a paper plate?
Yeah, yeah. So, really trying to think through how you can make this as interesting as possible is, yeah, just going to start pushing your character more and more. So, that's the other thing I keep talking about, but exaggerating stuff. So I'm like exaggerating the little tufts of fur to pop out her silhouette a little bit more. On the bag, I gave some like fringes, which I think could help with partially the silhouette, but also think about even if your concept is not in motion and the character's standing still, showing things that we intuitively know could have motion to them makes the character more interesting. So, like these fringes, we know if they were blowing in the wind, they would go like this. We know that her long braids would be blowing in the wind. We know that the fur would be kind of rustling around. So, really show like how it can be moving in a 3D space, and yeah, it makes characters look a lot cooler. So I don't want it to hang too long on this piece, but
Yeah.
here's kind of just the quick crit of just like changing some of the anatomical stuff and then really thinking through the character. And what I actually did was add that complementary color into some of the little key interest points. So the gold little buttons and stuff pulls that back in so it's not just on her head.
Yeah. Very clever you. I didn't notice that until you said it.
Okay, here is Megalith's character. This is
And
this is cool.
Meg did do this design stuff.
Yes, yeah. So
Yeah.
this has more of a feeling, and after working with Meg for a little while too, she's another one of my mentees right now. She has really cool stories going on in her head, like literally at all times, and I think it becomes very apparent.
Love that.
So, let's see, what do I even want to say about this one? So, just in general, I think that the magical portion is almost. I get the point of this, right? It's almost doing like a yin and a yang sort of thing, but it feels like it's covering too much of the design, at least for my taste. And it's also forcing you to have this like really wide box, whereas I almost want to just see the figure more centered on a like a concept sheet kind of thing, and I want to see you're thinking more on the design side of it than like this crazy magical thing. It's like if you're gonna do that, then you kind of need a background to accompany it, in my opinion. Otherwise, what you can, I think, pretty easily do, if I just kind of knock this back a little bit.
I think that you painted the magic very beautifully. It's really hard to paint magic.
Yeah.
In fact, or was it this week or last week? It was last week. I pinged Nick and I showed him a painting that I was working on. I was like, I need help. I can't make this magic effect look right. Can you help me? Like, it's hard, and I think you did this very well. Like, the particles look like water. It's very beautiful. Good on you. But it's covering up your lovely
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
And I wish that we had a version maybe where the magic is happening and a version where it's not.
Yeah.
Or that it was knocked back like Nick is doing right here. Because I want to see her dress. We can't see her dress at all now. So like,
yeah, I'm trying to think of. I'm basically trying to like still bring it in, but just like not make it so crazy that it's like gonna completely cover everything up, and have it almost be more like the fan is like morphing into the energy, as opposed to the energies like sitting on top of it.
Yeah.
So like, how can we connect these elements a little bit more so that it feels like the energy's coming from the fan and it's not just sitting on top of the fan. And this is actually the same issue you were having when I gave you your critique is Meg is going too bright with her magic, like in terms of white, and it's not allowing her enough room for contrast. So what I would do for really anyone who wants to paint magic is, magic doesn't exist in real life, so I would literally just look at other artists that you think have done magic very successfully and try to learn what they've done. I did that myself. This is actually a guy I met years ago. But I think his name's Ryan Yee, but he's a Magic the Gathering artist, and he does really beautiful magic spell stuff. So I just studied how he did it, and I tried to like mimic that style when I painted magic. So
well, I googled Ryan Yee and I came up with a crypto bro, so I don't think that was
no.
the right guy.
I haven't seen him post anything in a really long time, so, and I think that's his name. I hope I'm not getting Ryan Yee. But anyway,
Let's try ArtStation.
You finding him?
No.
Huh.
Ryan Yee.
I don't know. I could be
Oh,
getting it
I
too.
spelled it a different way, and I got magic. Yeah, it was spelled Yee, not Yi.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, he does paint
You
magic
found
very
him?
beautifully.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I will link to his art
Yeah.
station. Oh, his self-portrait is really beautiful too. If it Meg says if it helps, I gave you a magic-free version. That probably would have helped.
That's all
So
right.
you
I
didn't have to paint it out. But
that's all right. I actually like that I'm able to start pulling from some of these colors to
mhm.
kind of show you how I'm picturing
Yeah.
selling this concept. Um, okay, so same thing with. I think maybe you could just go a little more exaggerated with the flow of the hair. And now that I'm actually drawing into this, almost making the hair like what's the word, graphic-y is kind of cool. I'm using a really hard brush,
Mhm.
but I'm starting to like create these like really more like geometric shapes. And I don't know, it's I sometimes you have happy accidents, right? And you're just like,
Yeah.
oh, this looks a lot more interesting. And what I notice a lot from Meg's work too is she deals with a lot of round edges, and I think maybe trying to switch some edges between more round and more sharp is going to give more variation in the figure and make it not feel like the whole thing is so, I don't know, it's almost like there's like this like gelatinous feel to the character right now because everything is treated with that same feel. So I don't know, maybe these like horn things, we can just go a little bit sharper on some of the edges, and it's going to make the horns stand out more. Like
Mhm.
I don't know how else to really say it. Like, um, but I think it just juxtaposes. Like you kind of have like a thick girl going on, which is cool. But because you're trying to present that as your character, having hard shapes around her will make her thickness more apparent in her character. Does that make sense? Because you're kind of like allowing her legs to have this roundness to them, the arms, the face, and then you have like more angles around her, and it's like it makes her body like stand out more, which I think is cool.
Mhm.
So like even these little furry things, like maybe we can just kind of exaggerate them a little bit more. And I don't know, some of this is definitely personal preference, but I think sometimes it's just worth being said, and it's kind of up to Megan then to decide if she likes this direction or she thinks. The only reason I'm bringing this up is because I get the feeling she's doing this more out of a comfort zone thing than out of like this is specifically part of my style kind of thing.
Yeah.
So just kind of like you were saying a little bit ago, Alice, like sometimes you need to just try some new stuff, and I think you'll be surprised with the
Yeah.
result that will yield you.
Yeah.
So let's see if I turn this on and off, we can kind of see how this is gonna look now.
I wonder if
Yeah, I
Meg would
mean
be
personally, I think it looks cool with some of these harder angles. What were you gonna say?
um I wonder if Meg do you always I know you for um your little spritelets you don't paint them with line. Um and do you make like large character pieces without line?
Um,
sometimes.
She's probably going to respond, but just from what I've
Mm-hmm.
been talking to her about, she's been wanting to have like larger illustration stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
she also definitely has more of a focus on the line art stuff right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that what I've been trying to work more with her on is the understanding of how light wraps around form, so that even if she
Mm-hmm.
does go with this line art stuff and she's doing some painting or some shading underneath, it
Mm-hmm.
feels more round and accurate, which
Right.
is going to just like pop everything out more.
Yeah.
I'd also just watch out anatomically, as I was kind of saying before, like the so this length looks shorter than the forearm length. Like the forearm maybe just feels just a little too long. And I get that her arm is stretched out, but maybe that then means that we pull her bicep out a little bit more and her shoulder out, so she's like really exaggerating that extending. This is a really difficult pose because there's like this kind of elegance to it. And again, I think by really pulling your character is how you're going to achieve that dynamic look a lot more. And then what I'm also going to encourage Meg to do is going forward when designing poses like this, I think messing now more with foreshortening is going to be the next step to like
Yeah.
making this really really cool. So like, having her front arm kind of coming in more, and we're looking more like back in space. Like, to me this just feels so much more dynamic. And there's nothing wrong with this. It's just, I think that's Meg's next step, because she's
Yeah.
started to achieve like better anatomy with her figures, is like pushing the angles of things so that they feel powerful.
Powerful and heroic and really
Yeah.
like setting the scene with just one figure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I asked about line art not because I'm like, grr, line art. Like I work with in illustrations with line art all the time. And I love it. I was just curious because I was like, wow, Meg really did some really beautiful painting. I wonder if she ever experiments with doing lineless work. Um, so and also thank you, BRO, for correcting me. They are called shadelings. I don't know why I can't remember that word.
Yeah.
um, so so yeah. I totally agree with you about the foreshortening. I think I uh I would love to see like some more like experimenting with being on like the figure intersecting planes. And Meg like pushing her space more. Um, that would just like it would like unlock a new level for
Yeah.
her. Like congratulations, you have leveled up.
Yeah.
Um, so
And I actually think in terms of her characters, like this is one that like I think you could do this character again in like a different pose or a different illustration, because it's a really cool character. So
yeah,
I don't
keep
know.
her in your pocket. She's great.
Yeah. All right. I saw Spell Knight in the chat before, so let's take a look
Yeah,
at.
hope you're still here
Yeah.
because this is a great piece.
Yeah. We really liked this one. So I think Spell Knight has very cool designs. I think that I think that's what's happening with this though, is that a lot of the values are kind of conflicting with each other. And we were just talking about a dynamic pose, right? And
Mhm.
this is why dynamic poses get harder, because once you start layering
Yeah.
things on top of each other, it's almost like you have to compose uh, how to make the silhouette as obvious as possible. So I really like that you've got these like really long sheaths behind the character. I think that right now the arm is kind of creating a tangent with the leg, because it reads as just like this one long line downwards, which is just unfortunately not doing you any justice.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think. I think the best way to fix it would just be to move her arm just a little bit forward and more foreshortened, so that we have more of this like negative space in between the arm and the knee,
Yeah.
and then really foreshorten the crap out of the sword so it's like pointing right at us. I think angling the character's eyes more up at us too, like she's looking at us and she's like about to, you know, fight us with her sword, is going to push the storytelling a little bit more as well.
Yeah.
I think popping out this arm back here is also going to help you with your silhouette, and then maybe this sword kind of goes out more in this direction instead of up, because again, this is like creating kind of a tangent with her head in a weird way. And yeah,
I
just go ahead.
I might actually have the other sword go back. Would that work?
I think it
No,
back,
behind.
like what, she's holding it backwards
Like
kind of thing.
no, like that would actually be really cool. But I
Like her arm is like completely back
yeah.
and holding it down, but then you're kind of crossing, having to cross through here.
Well, I was thinking she would be holding it out, like away from her body. Yeah.
like that. Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
Like she's like
oh, oh,
completely open stance.
oh. That's cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a
Yeah.
good idea. Yeah, because then that really opens up her silhouette.
Mhm.
So that's something to think about. Also, really study this. This will come down to references, but study how people plant their feet. Right now, it's like the ankle is going to, if the ground is straight, right, the heel is going to have to sit flat. So she's going to have to kind of turn her ankle so that that heel is planted like that, and the bulb of her foot is more forward like that. So right now, it just looks like she's not like standing on anything
Yeah,
necessarily.
it's a little bit floaty at the moment.
The other, this
What
is, yeah. Go ahead.
mm,
Go ahead.
something that you can do when you're composing a scene or a pose like really like quick off the fly, like you're not um working from a reference yet, you're just trying to like set an idea in your mind, and you want to make sure that everything is sort of like stuck to the ground, gravity wise. You can sketch in a very quick perspective grid, um, and just like make sure that nobody's tilted incorrectly, because a lot of the time our brain and our eye will sort of be like, yeah, that's right, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and we will build off of that for you know many minutes without realizing our mistake, until it is you know not too late to fix it, because it's never too late to fix something or redo it, but late enough that it feels like you know a knife in the chest. So um oh yeah, glad you're still here, Spell Knight. Yeah, a just like a very quick like hash perspective grid, just to give you a feel for like, is everybody still working with gravity here?
Mm-hmm.
um can can really be a godsend. But I commend you, Spell Knight, for uh like just diving in head first with this pose and this camera. I think what Nick was talking about before with like imagining that you're the cameraman, and framing the scene in an interesting way, uh, you've been able to capture that. Uh, uh, like, I don't know at what point you are in your artistic journey, but um, it's a really hard um, thing to learn. Is how do I frame my pieces in an interesting way?
Hmm.
And um, you've got that already, and um, I'm I'm really pleased for you because uh, it's a challenge that I feel like a lot of us grapple with. Um, so, like, invest in that skill,
Yeah.
uh, and keep pursuing it. Um,
So I wanna bring up two things too that I think are really important for anybody, especially people that have more stylized work, because I'm working with another mentee that it's like it's hard to give this advice to people that have a very obvious style, because a lot of times you want to think like, oh well, that's just part of my style, that's why it looks like this. But there are things you can do to keep your style and still just make it so much better, just
yeah,
so much better and so much more visually pleasing. So the first thing is, I think that in general, Spell Knight, like, the brush you're using is just not doing your style any justice, because it's creating too much visual confusion with all of these. It's kind of like what I was saying about Cadence's piece. Like, there's so much of like, I'm seeing this like everywhere. So because you have kind of a more round, cartoony kind of style, keep with a brush that's just a little bit simpler and a little bit easier on the eyes, and it'll allow your line work and your cool proportions to shine through a lot more. The second thing I'm going to say is I remember this was the same critique I had for you last time, and I understand that still working on this stuff, but I think almost like doing studies to nail this as soon as you possibly can in the most simple way is going to dramatically change your work. Um, and that is making sure that even though you're working with this style, you're getting things in proportion in the context of the style you're rolling with. And again, like I said, I've been working with my one mentee. He has a very specific style he's going for. He references more like superhero and like comic book art. Um, but there's some things that I was seeing he was doing where I was just like, hey, if you just don't do that thing because it doesn't make sense in like a lighting situation, it's going to just make the face read a lot better. So one of the things that I just fixed with yours, for example, and I don't know, this may have been a stray mark, but you have this mark here that looks like you're showing us a nostril, right? But if you're telling us that her nose is pointing down like this, her nostrils are going to be underneath her nose. Like, you would just not see that line. Even if you're saying that's the top of the nostril, like, you have so few lines on the face that it's not worth showing this construction line of the nostril wrapping around. It wouldn't be worth showing the ridge of the nose or the bag under the eye, because in this lighting scenario, this very kind of soft coloring you're using, you just want to show the very harsh transitions of planes. So here on the side of the nose, like, that's a harsh transition of a plane. The eyelashes already have like darkness to them, but you know, the lip, the bottom of the lip, yeah, you could maybe say you could make a case for that being, a harsh transition, but also just putting things in the correct spots. So really making sure, and I think you did a better job with this one, but there's just some things that are a little off. Like, if we wrap our line around the eye, like, this point and this point have to match. Like, it has to be perfect when you're working with line art, because you're coming to a point when you're making these marks. Like, you can kind of fudge stuff a little bit more with painting, honestly, because you have like thickness to your strokes that can kind of mask these really exact precise points That's why it's almost harder to have this like really aesthetically pleasing line art style, and that's why when we as artists see a super aesthetically pleasing line art style, it's hard to put your finger on, but it's because they're doing these specific things. So like here's another thing, just anatomically, it, the ear is just up way too high. If we run
Mm.
our finger around our eyebrows, it should touch the top of our ears. If we run our finger along the bottom of the nose, it should touch the bottom of our ears. Now you can go crazy with proportions. You can have a really big ear or a really small ear, but the entire ear in general is just shifted up too much on the plane of the face in this perspective, right? So let's make a case of like you in your style you have a small ear. Well, then the small ear should be here because it's in the middle of this frame of her like eye line and the nose line.
Yeah.
Hopefully that makes sense to you. So I went through and I kind of just like tried not to totally get away from your style, but be more intentional about the stylistic things to like just crispen it up a little bit. So, yeah, I like that you kind of pull the eyelashes to a swoosh. Like that's maybe something that you can kind of capitalize on
Mhm.
with your style. I definitely fixed the eyebrows so that again they're doing this thing like this point. If we run it around her head, kind of goes to that point, and then same with the insides of the eyebrows. This is more of a stylistic thing, but this is just kind of showing the fact that the nose is running down at an angle. It's like you can kind of take it or leave that kind of thing. I knocked out the lip because if we're looking down at this figure and you have this super round face, even if we were to render this out, like there'd be such little contrast in the lip that it's not worth putting a line there because it's describing a plane transition that wouldn't really exist in real life. And that's kind of the way to think about style. I also tried to give her hair a little bit more structure. So like think about like okay, that's a piece. That's a piece. This is a piece, and all the parts of the hair are growing out of that part like that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Spell Knight had
yeah.
some comments in
Okay,
a response to what we said.
sure,
For sure, I don't really use a lot of references when I draw, if any, so I'm going to be more. For sure, I'm going to use some more for perspective and posing.
awesome,
And about the little dot next to the nose, that was a stray mark, unfortunately, but I'll be more diligent in my line work and anatomy.
awesome.
We're also just like picking apart your work because we liked it a lot. Like
Yeah,
we both reacted very strongly to your piece because it's dynamic, it's fun. You've got like such cool spell like effects going on here. I love that it's like one sword is ice and the other is fire, and she's
hmm,
standing on this like very dynamic plane with the like snowy landscape sort of opening in like a rift behind her. Like this is very imaginative and very
hmm,
cool, and the way that like the blue shadow is coming up on her armor, like it's not entirely accurate, but it's very like it feels kind of graphic novel
hmm.
esque to me. I think that maybe your brush isn't like the brush that you use for color isn't entirely serving you, but I wouldn't like toss it in the garbage. If you use it with a little more preciseness and intention, like it can be combined with your sort of like pencil line art in a very effective way, and it can look like really pleasing and nice. But it shouldn't. I think I agree with Nick that it probably shouldn't be your main color brush because you have a lot of visual information going on, and
the
Would
best
cell
way
shading fit your style better?
Yeah, well, the best way for me to really quick explain this is like if
Hmm.
you have a shift from light to dark, you should be seeing the most texture in here. But in reality, I'm seeing texture here, I'm seeing texture here, I'm seeing texture everywhere. So if you are going to go with a more grainy brush, just make sure that you're reserving the texture for like those transitions between your light and your shadow
Yeah.
points.
I'd say Spell Knight. I want you to pursue the style of color and shading that you want to do, that you admire in other artists, that you feel is natural to you. I wouldn't try to adapt your style to something that you think is best for
Hmm.
your work. Um, do what you like. Pursue the art that feels like what you want to make.
Hmm.
I find that when like aspiring artists or young artists are like trying to like match a style, find their style, like I need to achieve a style right away. It's kind of the antithesis of what they're supposed to. What the point is. Like your style will evolve as you continue to work.
Hmm.
Um it's it's just going to happen because you continue making art. My dog is behind me. That's why you're seeing the shape in my my backdrop here. Um, so if you like cell shading and you want to try it, please try it, and maybe it'll look good with what you do.
Hmm.
But don't feel forced.
Yeah. Cool. All right. We've got one more, and I'm just gonna kind of go through this pretty quickly. Okay, so I like just the almost like the calmness of this one. I think my first thought would be just the crop on this feels not quite right. This is, like we were saying earlier, a reason to go very centered with the painting because then it just makes the character feel very lonely in this sort of like wintry landscape. I think the biggest thing with this piece is just it needs a much needed push in contrast. So like if I even remove this and I grab some of these whites, like they're not even going near white except for maybe kind of right here. And if we're like blasting light on this, like they should either be really light or we should be darkening everything in the scene to make the lights appear lighter, right? So I almost want to say, just a quick edit doing something like that, and then maybe what we could do is go to hue saturation and just lower our saturation a little bit more. Then we kind of get
Mhm.
that grayness, and then what you can end up doing is punching light back into it to make the or sorry, punching colors back into it to make the colors pop even more. So yeah, I think this is pretty cool. I think also just considering materials with metal, even if this again is like a Dark Soulsy kind of helmet, like it's still gonna be shiny because it's metal. There's still gonna be a shininess to it. There's still gonna be a shininess to the pauldron, and those little hits of light are going to be what makes this piece feel really dynamic because your eye is going to gravitate towards these little tiny bits of light. And for this artist, it might actually be good to just keep your canvas zoomed out and just like be like, where can I add more light and where can I add more shadow to be able to bring more depth into the piece. So yeah, I'm not gonna hang on this one too long, but yeah, I think it's a cool piece, and I think this artist would benefit from just definitely doing some maybe some value study specifically, especially because painting in snow is like pretty hard because it's so bright, and you have to be much more subtle with your values to achieve realism. So yeah,
Mm.
what did we get? The stronger you get at rendering in a realistic matter, the easier it gets to render in a simplified matter. Most flat illustrations follow the same fundamentals as painting. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, guys. So the next monthly challenge study is up on our Discord, discord.gg/artbros, and yeah, that one's a fun one because I think the prompt is like making a creator god or something like that. So
Yeah.
that one that one was pretty crazy, but I think we'll get some cool submissions. But yeah, as always, thank you guys for submitting this past month. You guys did awesome work, and we will see you guys next time.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.